Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 30 of Takeaways. My name is Patrick Searcy. I'm Director of Marketing for ALN Apartment Data, and I'm joined by the actual star of the show here, Jordan Brooks, who's our Senior Market Analyst. Jordan, how are you today?
I'm great, Patrick. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's Happy New Year to you. And, we're actually talking about our first article of the year for our newsletter. It's called Roadblocks from 2022, Likely to Persist in 2023. So first, I want to jump into that the section that you wrote. It's called Financial Position of Consumers. And in there, you mentioned a couple of reasons that consumers are feeling a pinch. You go on to point out a couple of measurements to explore that, and that's the disposable personal income and the personal savings rate. So I wonder if you had any other measurements that you considered while you were writing that.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of different angles you could take this from, and just kind of for the sake of length, I didn't put really everything in the newsletter, but when we talk about the financial health of households, obviously, inflation plays a big role there, and the fact that inflation has wiped out most of the wage gains recently is a factor. Another one we talked about in the newsletter was the personal savings rate, the disposable personal income metric. So one that I didn't have in there was household debt service payments as a percent of the disposable personal income, which is basically how much of your disposable income are you having to use for debt service payments. And overall, the overall percentage for the U.S. is relatively low. If you look back over the last few decades, it's really sort of at the lowest point it's been outside of the pandemic period in a long time. But if you look at the sort of the trend of where it's been going and the percent change, really all of 2021 and the first 3 quarters of 2022, which is the Q4 data is not yet out. Basically, those 7 consecutive quarters, the percentage was going up and pretty significantly to the point where we're now back to almost 10%, whereas late 2020, early 2021, it was down there at 8.5, something like that. So it's gone up quite a bit, and sort of the trajectory is on a pretty steep upward slope. And so just kind of the idea with that whole section of the newsletter is just kind of pointing out that if we're not able to achieve the quote unquote soft landing this year with, getting inflation under control without having pretty substantial jobs losses, then that's fine. But if we do see unemployment start to rise this year, which I think at some point is probably likely at this point, then, based on various kind of perspectives of how you might slice and dice the household data, households are not exactly prepared for a loss of income at this point, and especially when you factor in on that not only the percent of income going towards debt payments, but just the credit card debt on the rise, mortgage rates increasing, mortgage payments and things like that. So just it's something worth keeping an eye on as we move through the year for multifamily is households are really not as insulated for a jobs loss recession as they were, say, in 2020 or early 2021.
If there's one thing that I've heard over and over the last 15 years that I've been in the industry, is that the multifamily industry is seasonal. I noticed as I was reading through the article that you didn't really go into any kind of seasonality within it, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the subject.
Well, I think it's a really interesting topic this year. I mean, one of the unique things about 2020 and 21 was kind of the absence of the usual seasonal trend, and really for obvious reasons. In 2022, we did kind of see the reemergence of the seasonality that we're used to in the multifamily industry. Basically softer Q4, Q1, stronger second and third quarters. And so we saw kind of a seasonal demand bounce in sort of the March to May timeframe that carried into the early summer, but it wasn't as substantial as normal, and it didn't last as long. I mean, by July and certainly August, it was done. And so this year, I think as we get into sort of the March through May timeframe, what we see apartment demand doing in those months is going to be a nice bellwether indicator of what we might be able to anticipate in the back half of the year. Really, if the spring bounce materializes, and then if it does, kind of to what extent, and then how long that lasts into the summer is what we're going to be really paying attention to.
It's the beginning of the year, so we've got all new events and stuff coming up. Jordan, what's on your plate?
Yeah, fresh year. So a new travel schedule for sure. I'll be at the NMHC annual meeting here in a little over a week. So definitely if you see me there, please come say hi. I'll also be doing a webinar with Elizabeth Francisco from Resman on February 3rd, and we're just going to kind of be looking at what to look for in 2023, and maybe also giving some reasons to to think that maybe the sky is not falling as a guarantee necessarily for this year. It's been interesting. Last year, certainly in the first half of 2022, I think ALN's perspective was a little bit more bearish than a lot of the content that was out there. And then this year, although there are causes for concern, I do think there's also some reason for optimism. So we're going to be kind of discussing that in the webinar on February 3rd. Registration information will be all across our social media here shortly. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And then also in February, I'll be speaking at the Acadiana Apartment Association in Louisiana on the 14th, and speaking at the New Orleans Apartment Association on February 16th. So if that's your area, come check that out. And again, we'll have all the details across social media as well as those get a little bit closer. And then as always, we've got some awesome content going up on the blog, alndata.com/blog. So be sure to check that out.
He's right. Keep an eye on our social media for more info. You can also now follow us on Instagram. We're on Instagram. That's ALN Apartment Data. You can find us there, or search ALN Apartment Data on Facebook and Twitter, or ALN APT Data on Twitter. So yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of our content here on YouTube. Jordan, thank you so much for your time today and for talking with me. I always enjoy these conversations. Look forward to having a conversation with you next month.
See you next month, Patrick. Thanks.